obviously the Rugby World Cup. We'll also quickly dip our toes into all the other rugby that's been going on, because there's a top 14, there's Pro 14, there's the NRC, and the Mitre 10 Cup has all been happening. So we'll do a quick news roundup just to bring you up to speed with all of that as well. Hello everyone in the live chat, it's great to have you here. We are here at 8 PM every Tuesday night with House Rugby Chat, covering the hot topics in rugby. And joining me, I have John. How's the coffee, sir?
It's just been mixed. Got just the right amount of coffee and just a light touch of hot chocolate. So should be ready to go.
Ah, there we go. And he is, because daylight savings has thrown us here. I must say, daylight savings has been a disaster in New Zealand for me. It means that, well, I've sort of lost track of time and haven't caught up in the rugby games I wanted to. But B, that means that 10:15 kickoffs are now 11:15. It means we're going until, I was going until like 1:30 in the morning last night, talking about Scotland Samoa with Steve on Cornflake on the Cornflake channel. So yes, it does mean late nights, but not tonight because there is no rugby today. John, have you managed to get the right counselling to keep you sane?
I had to go for a long walk just to work through the what do they call it? The withdrawal.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's great to see that Ollie is here on time and not missed anything this week. Just let you know,
Welcome,
I'm
Ollie.
on the Good George Pale Ale. There we go. And I think, and you're on the coffee, so a good combination. So let's just kick off and we'll quickly run around the houses of the various competitions. So the top 14 is underway over in France. And Lyon are topping the table at the moment with 5 wins from 5 games. It's amazing. They're 5 games in already. It's just nuts.
Can I just make an observation here?
Yep.
And say that there is some understanding that I have of these French rugby club owners in their reluctance to release players. Now, we know it's not right. I'm just saying I have some kind of understanding for them because they are releasing players already for France, and they're playing a tournament where every match counts, and every match that they lose affects their ability to win this title. And now they must not only release their French players, but they must also release other foreign players that are contracted outside. Now, it's all very well to say, well, when they first signed them up, when they first signed them up, they would have had in their contracts, and they should have known this could take place. But the point being is for New Zealand and South Africa and Australia, because Australia's tournament is a development tournament, really.
Yep.
Okay. So there is no major tournament happening at the moment in the Southern Hemisphere. And these other Northern Hemisphere clubs are being affected. And really, this is really something where we should have an alignment of the schedules. Can you imagine trying to play the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup, the Football World Cup, while Barcelona and Real Madrid and Liverpool and Man United and Bayern Munich are in the middle of their competitions, and they don't have their players?
Well, but this is why you have the Gallagher Premiership, who decided that they've kicked off what they call the Premiership Cup, which is effectively their development tournament, and they're going to run that during the group stages, and they're not actually going to kick off the mains tournament until the knockout rounds, until the finals. So sure, they're impacted, but they're impacted for like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks.
Yes.
Whereas France has decided, or the top 14 decided, to kick off, as I say, they've had 5 rounds already. So they could have delayed their season in the same way that the Gallagher Premiership have to avoid it, but they decided not to. So there should be better alignment, but also they have made some of the choices themselves.
Yes, absolutely, right. But it's crazy.
To give you an idea of the impact, so Clermont are in 5th. That's pretty decent for them. But Toulouse, another side that we see a lot of players being released to France, they're down in 11th. And Racing 92 players such as Finn Russell, who for France for Scotland obviously play, they're down in 13th place, second from last. Racing 92, the big spenders in Paris. So yes, it is very much impacted by the loss of players, and they will have to do some catching up. They have some catching up to do later in the season.
And remember, the Pro 14 is a tournament with relegation, right? So this is not just we could have a bad year with some bad results and come in the bottom part of the table. That might be the case in the UK and in Ireland.
Well, the English league also has relegation, but in the Pro 14, for example,
in the Pro 14, So we're talking about potentially huge financial implications. So I mean, you kind of want to bang your head against a wall and say, how is this not something we can put a man on the moon, but we can't come up with a synchronized rugby calendar? Anyway, this is again. You're going to say to me, we'll talk about this after the World Cup, right?
The synchronised calendar, yes, we will do. But yeah, interesting. Teams like Power and Bayern are third and fourth, two teams that will expect to see themselves down in the bottom section of the league come the end of the season.
Yes.
So as I say, the Guinness Pro 14 has also kicked off, and that has had one round that kicked off last weekend. And you'll be happy. The Cheetahs got themselves a try bonus point win. There we go. So the Cheetahs top Conference A at the moment with that one win. Ulster, Leinster also picked up wins as well. I guess upset. Glasgow lost, which is one of them. But this is much more the kind of normal. Teams like Zebre lost to Dragons lost, as you'd expect. In Conference B, the three teams that lost were Kings, Benetton, Treviso, and Connacht. So yeah, not the same impact on the Pro 14 that we've seen. So yeah, that's also kicked off. The development tournament we were talking about, NRC, the Force are leading the way there. But again, we see a similar sort of thing with the Fiji Drua. Fiji Drua have only won one game this season. They won the tournament last year, and they're in 7th place. So out of 8. I got something. The French team in Japan are not full strength team. No, Jordan. The French team in Japan is full strength. They have had all their players released from the clubs. So no, the French team in Japan is full strength, even if Bastereau isn't there. That was.
Well, what are your thoughts on the selection or non-selection of Bastereau?
Look, he's getting on a bit now. But there have been times where I've seen him be the only player to sort of show any heart in that French team a couple of years ago, and he seemed to be trying to carry the team and drag them forward on his shoulders. So there were times where he was kind of the only guy who was leading them. But this team is built around youth and expression. And those are two things he doesn't have. What I mean by expression, I mean expression in style of play rather than words. He's not that style of player. When you look at the players like Ntamak, etc., that are coming through from Clermont and from Toulouse, those sort of players, Fiku, and those sort of are much more expressive or exuberant players than he is. He doesn't fit the new style. Really.
Well, fit. He doesn't fit the new style. Fit is the appropriate word. Look, I'm sorry, but I don't want. But we need to address the giant, huge, overweight elephant in the room.
You do realise he played number 8 for Lyon in a pre-season game.
Yeah, but he still would. Yeah. That's not dealing with the root cause of the problem, right? That's just shifting it down, down the team sheets to another position.
Yes, it is. But yes, so he's doing half a season with Lyon before going over to play Major League Rugby for Rugby United New York. And finally, the Mitre 10 Cup. For a full breakdown of this, watch the.
By the way, sorry. Can I just before we move on from Bastereau,
Yep.
Can I just say to you that if he had ever got down to under 10% body fat percentage. What he could have been is scary.
Oh, absolutely. He is definitely a. Not just that. It's not just body fat. I mean, remember, this is the guy that way back in early 2000s, sometime, I can't remember exactly when it was, got drunk on the way back from a night out, fell into a glass table and cut himself, and tried to hide that fact by making spurious claims about getting assaulted on the way home from the bar in New Zealand.
And made those spurious claims. He claimed his attackers were Maori as well, or Islanders, So I can't remember the exact details, but he kind of blamed it on Maoris or Islanders, so it was a double that he went for there.
Yep. It's not just weight that he's had a problem with in the past. It looks like, and also in the current. It looks like he's got over that immaturity that he had there, and has become a leader of that in French rugby, which is good to see. So he has grown up in some ways, but I think it's perhaps a guy, maybe a bit like an Akira Ioane, where it all just came too easy, too early for him, and he's not necessarily had perhaps too many yes people around him, rather than, as you say, for getting the truth to him as to what he could do. A waste. Not in the same extent as Akira Ioane looks like he's going to be, because let's be honest, he made it into the international side. He got a whole bunch of caps at international level, but as you say, he could have been so much better.
Could have been. I think so much of this also depends on. I mean, the primary route is the player itself, right? You've got to take responsibility for your own life, but also, do you wind up in the right environment? If I could give advice to Akira Ioane, it would be one thing, and that would be to get out of Auckland. Preferably try and go to the Crusaders, right? But certainly get away from Auckland, because it just seems at the moment to be it just seems to be a place where talent goes to die.
Yep, no, agreed. The current circle of people he's got around him aren't doing him any favours.
Yeah.
Very quickly, so if you want an update on the Mitre 10 Cup, then I say Steve and I talked about it last night, but basically Tasman running away with the Premiership and looking extremely dangerous with 8 wins now. The Championship looking much closer, and also a very strong Championship this year, with Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty at the top there. John and I were at Bay of Plenty at the weekend when they turned over Hawke's Bay. So when those two meet, as they probably will do in the final of the Championship, that'll be a tasty game as well. So on to the Rugby World Cup. One bit of news before we get on to the actual games. Have you seen that Ardie Savea is going to be wearing goggles tomorrow night?
No.
And
what's that?
You might have seen a player, the Italian or fly half of Irish descent, Ian McKinley, who got blinded in one eye at the bottom of a ruck by a stray boot, I think it was, and so had to give up rugby until he got some goggles that he could wear to protect his eyes. Ardie Savea is saying that basically he has blurry vision out of his left eye,
right,
and that he wants to protect his good eye from anything that may or may not happen in the future in games. He doesn't want to take the risk, so he's going to be wearing these goggles from tomorrow.
Mm. Well, it makes sense.
Yep, something that World Rugby is only allowed or is so he wouldn't have been able to do it before now. So tomorrow night, folks, if you wonder why he's wearing those goggles, that's why he's wearing them. It'll be interesting to see how many players in future take them up and start wearing them.
I went to school with an outstanding athlete, exceptionally gifted athlete, but he was blinded in one eye by his brother, threw a slipper at him. We're both small, and so he's blinded in the one eye. And as a result, he didn't play any of the ball sports and any of the contact sports because of the risk to his other eye, right? But if he could have had goggles, he would have made a great rugby player.
So yes, so that's and you're right. It's that risk to the other eye. I mean, if you lose sight in both eyes, obviously it's much more debilitating than just losing it in one. Is it worth the risk? And clearly, no, it's not, as we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So getting on to the games then. This time last week, it seems ages ago, but it was only a week ago, we didn't know that Fiji would lose to Uruguay. That up until that point, we had a great tournament in some really good rugby, but everything had been going to script, and then suddenly Uruguay beat Fiji, and boy oh boy, the script got thrown out the window, and that really lit up the tournament.
Yeah, it was a tremendous result, and you could see the emotion from the players afterwards, just what it meant to them to get that win.
And unfortunately, it's a game I still haven't caught up on, which I really do need to do. But yeah, obviously everyone's seen that they said at the post-match interview with the emotion that came through there. One of the things that was said in that interview was that Uruguay had been building up to this game ever since they knew they'd qualified for like 2 years, planning for that game. And 4 days later, we saw that on Sunday when Georgia put away Uruguay 33-7.
Yes.
That 4-day turnaround for a Tier 2 team with that lack of depth in their squad, they were never going to be able to cope, were they?
No, they weren't. And how long did Georgia have? 8 days?
6 days. So only 2 more, but even so, enough.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a huge difference, right? And also you'll see that Georgia changed 12 players from the game against Japan. So Georgia was targeting the Uruguay game.
Yes. So for Georgia again, and actually something we'll get on to talking about when we look at the pools, but Georgia's target is to get third place. They're not expecting to get first or second, because third place gets you automatic qualification for the next Rugby World Cup.
So they didn't target the first game; they targeted Uruguay.
Yep.
And so they had only 3 players, starting players, that played 6 days before, and 12 completely fresh players. So from Uruguay's perspective, especially in the forwards, and you could see it in the forwards, they had no price. Yep.
So with that Uruguay one, we heard they said they were targeting that game. So next they've got Australia and Wales to come. Their 2 hardest games, and let's hope that they actually that they can recover in time to play as well as they can do. Let's be honest, we're not expecting them to get a second win in the Rugby World Cup. But then again, we didn't expect them to get that first.
That's also true. We weren't expecting Japan to beat Ireland.
We weren't, and that also happened on Saturday. Japan beat Ireland to really throw that pool wide open. With that win, obviously lots of parallels people are making with the miracle of Brighton, or the Brighton miracle. Was this a bigger win than that or not? I've heard both cases put forward, that basically Ireland have beaten the number 1 ranked team coming into this tournament, so yes, it's bigger. And other people saying, well, look, it really came out of nowhere last time, but we knew Japan were a decent side this time, so it's not quite as... So both, I can see both arguments, but either way, a massive win for them.
Well, I would say that the first win was the biggest upset, because it was so completely unexpected, right? And there was no background to it. But the second win, possibly, is even more impressive, because Ireland weren't ambushed. The Springboks were a little complacent. They didn't expect that from them, and they were found out, right? This time around, Ireland knew that this could be a potential banana skin for them. They were ready for it. They came into it. They were well coached, and still Japan put them away. So it's an even more impressive win, if not maybe so much of a surprise.
Yeah, very true. That's a good way of putting it. Absolutely. The other game that's happened in that pool is, and since we've last sort of talked, was last night. Samoa lost to Scotland 34-0. That ripped to bed Samoa's chances. We were talking in our post-match reaction to the Ireland-Japan game that Samoa was still in the hunt and could really mix things up with the other three. But after that performance, no. I'm sorry, no.
Now, what went wrong there? Is it a general malaise in the Samoan squad? That 34-0 is a serious hiding.
It is, and they Samoa just couldn't hold on to the ball for a lot of it. I'm not saying Scotland's handling was fantastic, but Samoa's handling was poor, and for Samoa to be the most effective they can be, their handling and their offloads have got to stick, and they just did not.
Were they knocking on when they were catching the ball, or were they losing the ball in contact?
The catching the ball. I mean, there was a lot of talk, as we've had in all of our all of them so far, of how slippy the ball is and blah blah blah. But even so, as Ollie says, yeah. To be fair, Scotland were pretty messy as well. They were, but they were unmessy enough to get the points when they needed to. We didn't. This was not a. People won't have come out of this and going, "Wow, Scotland was so good to put Samoa away like that." It was much more, "Wow, Samoa are a rabble." Unfortunately,
so they were. That's really sad, because Samoa had one win already, right?
Yes.
Right. So they had huge potential there. I watched some of their game against Tonga in the warm-up, which was played in a monsoon. They played it some time back. I think it was part of the Pacific Nations Cup.
Yep, that's right.
And I think it was played in Tonga.
In Tonga, yeah.
Was it in Samoa? In Tonga. And it was played in an absolutely torrential tropical downpour. And Samoa there were some good signs there, I thought, right? So to hear that they were reduced to that is very disappointing.
As Ollie makes a point, they were given a leg up by 2 penalty tries. Now, you can't go sliding into a player with your legs, with your knees, which was one of the yellow cards. Now, would Sean Maitland have kept control of the ball? That's questionable anyway, but it was clearly a yellow card. And the other yellow card, he just came blatantly in at the side of a ruck and held up the ball. So again, clear yellow card. So so Scotland's just better tactical kicking, being able to do a few a bit better in the set piece, and that was enough to get them through. But I say they were not impressive, unfortunately. Quick question in the chat there: should Japan be considered for the Rugby Championship if they make the quarterfinals? They should be in the Rugby Championship if they make the quarterfinals, or not.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. So yes.
Anyway. Absolutely. I mean, you consider people saying, why should Argentina came third in the World Cup? Third. So in other words, mighty New Zealand, mighty Australia got knocked out in the quarterfinal, and Argentina got through to the semi-final and then took third place. So this was in 2007, and it still took them 4 years to be accepted into the Rugby Championship. So, rugby we need to make decisions not only what's good to watch now, what is good for the game, instead of making so many of these parochial self-interest decisions. And absolutely, it would be good for rugby. I mean, it's madness to boot the Sunwolves out of rugby.
Yep, totally agreed. In fact, actually, just on a little divergence down Super Rugby, what I think we should do is that domestic competitions need to be time zone aligned. So actually, it should be Japan, Australia, New Zealand in their own tournament with the Pacific Islands. South Africa should align with Europe, and Argentina needs to build out that professional competition they're going to start in South America next year, and have some sort of European Champions Cup style thing with Major League Rugby in North America. That to me makes much more sense for domestic rugby to get aligned on time zones because of the travel factor, but also the fact that fans can watch games. You don't lose your team for a 4-week tour because the games are in the middle of the night. So so that's my kind of future vision of how I think domestic rugby should be.
I agree with you from a practical perspective.
Yep.
But for the development and skills of the game, if you move Australia and New Zealand out onto an island where Japan is still some way behind Australia and New Zealand in ability, right? If you do that and you separate Argentina, especially from competing with the other top tier nations, you do need to have that competition.
No,
right?
I'm talking domestically here. So I'm talking about the Jaguares. Keep the rugby championship, right, but the domestic competition, so the club competitions, get them time zone aligned.
I don't know if I fully agree with you there. I mean, I'm thinking now from a South African perspective. I think South Africa would be even further behind New Zealand, and they have dropped away alarmingly in the last 25 years. Remember, 25 years ago, South Africa had a winning record against the All Blacks. It might sound ludicrous to say this, but there was a team who had beaten the All Blacks more than the All Blacks had beaten them in 100 years. And that was the Springboks. And they've fallen away alarmingly in the professional era because of bad leadership of South African rugby, not because of talent. But I think they would be even further behind New Zealand, if it wasn't for the fact that they were competing regularly in Super Rugby. I would like to see Super Rugby opened up to player movement so that somebody like Beauden Barrett could go to the highest bidder. And if that means that he ends up playing for the Stormers, but the Stormers have to make him completely available to the All Black selectors, but he can still be selected for New Zealand. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see us generate some interest outside of the rugby season in the movement of players, like you see in some of the other professional leagues. I think that would be really great, and to see some kind of draft system. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time.
That is for another day. So I say, Samoa, real shame. But it looks they could still trip up Japan if Japan do not turn up on the day and the ball starts to stick. So it's they could still play a part in who qualifies out of that group, but they won't qualify themselves. I think is where we're at with that one. Catching up on the other game, so last Thursday we put away Canada 48-7. Yep, it's a real shame. Canada were, a decade ago, the up-and-coming Tier 2 nation, and they have just slipped backwards. Their administration is a mess. It's a real shame as to where Canada has gone. They were supposed to be being talked about as joining the Six Nations, but that never came about.
What is happening with the administration? I don't know some of those details.
Yeah, I'm not fully up to date with all the details. What I do know, that from a financial point of view, they've had similar issues, not as bad as the USA, but similar issues to the USA. They were basically going to go bankrupt if they didn't qualify for this Rugby World Cup and get the World Rugby handout they get because of that. If basically Canada would have shut down and ceased being a competitive nation at all, if that had been the case. It was so. Yes, they're not. Thankfully, they've got the Toronto Arrows. They do have a Major League Rugby team. Hopefully, they can get another one set up in Vancouver, and that will then get them and that might give them the sort of platform to rebuild. But yeah, it's not been a good place. They've gone through coaches like there's no tomorrow as well. On that side of things.
Let's just point out to all the people that are following the stream. I don't know how involved you are in your local clubs. I don't know if you're a member in the Northern Hemisphere of a club that's owned by a millionaire like Saracens or something like that. But if you are a member of a local rugby club and your children have played local rugby in a local club, you will know that the success of the club and the success of any sport is hugely dependent on the work of volunteers and most of all on the leadership. If you have good leaders of your club, if your chairman is a good chairman, if you have a good board, if people follow them and they generate excitement and they are not self-focused, your club does well, right? If you have poor leadership, your club, your sport suffers, right? And around the world, as somebody who has now lived in New Zealand for 3.5 years, the primary reason that New Zealand is the number one rugby country in the world is they have the best leadership, and that filters down into the best coaching, and therefore they identify and develop the best players.
They're the best leadership to produce the All Blacks.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Spoken like a pom.
No. This be spoken like a Kiwi. That what they have done, or their lack of support for the Mitre 10 Cup, has seen crowds really diminish. We're seeing lower participation rate in school children as well. So there are. It's not all rosy in the land of the white cloud.
No, hang on a second. I'm not saying that they are exemplary.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm saying they're the best of the bunch that we have.
Cool. That's scary for everyone else, isn't it?
Yes. So yes, there are issues for them to deal with, and certainly there's concern about certain layers and things are dropping off at lower down, but and there are issues to address. Always will be, right? And there always will be things that could be done better. But so far as developing the game, they have done better than anybody else. And the results play out in the fact that their provincial teams win Super Rugby. I mean, it's ridiculous. Over 23 or 24 years, the number of times a New Zealand team has won Super Rugby is it's ludicrous. I think a South African team has won it 3 times, and Australian teams have maybe won it 4 times, and New Zealand's won it 17 times, right? And their international team is possibly the most successful sporting team in the history of sport, right? So their win rate away from home, that's the ridiculous thing. It's ludicrous, right? So what they've done for their sport in New Zealand has been better than anybody else. It's just straight up. And you can see by the fact of how many Kiwi coaches are there now at this World Cup.
Oh, lots. Yeah, I mean, you've Ireland. We've got the high profile ones like obviously New Zealand, Ireland, etc. But also they're in the Pacific Islands as well. Some of the other teams.
Yes, Pacific Islands, Canada, Georgia.
No, Canada's Welsh actually. I think, isn't
it? Do they not have a New Zealand coach?
I think the head coach is Wales. I think it's Jones. Anyway, I could be wrong. Isn't it?
New Zealand coach, right? Sorry? But maybe it's in the coaching carousel that went around there. Yeah. Maybe that New Zealand coach left. But Georgia is coached by a New Zealander.
The USA is. USA is coach. Sorry.
Yeah, the Samoa is coached by a New Zealander, although we're disappointed with their results. Japan, coached by a New Zealander. And if you want to go one tier down to assistant coaches, you even have at England, you have Kiwi coaches.
Yep.
Excuse me.
And just actually another one on the administration side before we move on. Even if you do mess up as an administrator, you can still get another good job. Nigel Melville, who was head of the USA Rugby, set up things like Pro Rugby, the Rugby Channel, and RIM, which eventually meant that USA Rugby went effectively broke and had to get a loan from World Rugby. Otherwise, the Sevens Rugby World Cup wouldn't have happened.
Okay, what is RIM, by the way? You set up RIM, you said?
RIM was the commercial arm they put together for Rugby International Marketing. It was the commercial arm they put together for that. And Augustin Pichot now is on the USA Rugby USA Union board to make sure they pay back the money that they got loaned to bail them out of trouble. So, but now he is in charge of running professional rugby in the UK, or in England, sorry, for the RFU.
Nigel.
Yes. So, a little bit concerned about what's going to happen to the RFU UK going forwards, but there you go. Getting back to the more fun side of actual games, England beat the USA 45-7. The USA I came into this one with, I had quite a lot of positivity about them, but they really haven't lived up to some of their pre-tournament hype. They did well beating an understrength Scotland last year, but they don't seem to have fronted up at this competition. And like Canada, their tackling has been woeful, unfortunately. Argentina beat
Argentina. I'm going to remember that. Argentina.
Beat Tonga 28-12. Yeah, again, that was one that we saw, or we saw the first half in the pub, or in the rugby club, over in Tauranga, and realised at half time that one was basically all over. Unfortunately, Tonga actually seemed to have sort of kept in touch in the second half, but by then it was gone. South Africa, Namibia, 57-3. We've already talked about Georgia, Uruguay. So the final game then is Australia, where Wales had a good first half. Australia had a good second half, but not good enough to come back. Where a defensive effort from Wales really saw them through there. And we're going to want to see a bit more from them attacking-wise if they're going to go deep into this tournament. And by deep, semi-finals, finals.
If I could summarise what we said to that game, is I cannot see Australia progressing all the way, even through to the final, because they don't have a tight five.
No.
Right? So rugby starts in the tight five. And Australia win the World Cup when they have John Eales, Phil Kearns, Patricia Noriega, Owen Finnegan. When they have those players in their tight five, then they can win a World Cup. But at the moment, if you look at that tight five for Australia, if you look at their first choice starting tight five, it's a harsh thing to say, but I don't think any of their first choice starting tight five would make the squad for New Zealand or the squad for South Africa, right? Forget first choice. They wouldn't even make the squad, right?
Yep.
And possibly not even for England, right? So if that's the case, you are behind the 8 ball. So that's the problem that Australia face. And the problem that Wales face is, I don't know if it's a lack of talent or if it's just a lack of ambition, but they're hugely limited in their plan when it comes to attacking with the back line. And the one really good thing that New Zealand has done for World Rugby is show that if you're going to beat them and win the World Cup, you need to be able to score tries.
Yep, and that's you're only likely to beat Wales by a lot of points because their defence is very good. but they're not going to score many points against you either. Which is
Yes.
unless there's a whole bunch of stuff hidden that we haven't seen yet.
Yes, and the thing that, they certainly couldn't have afforded to hide a whole lot of stuff against Australia because they needed to win that game, right? But the thing is with New Zealand is, and again, this is this is the yardstick that we're measuring everybody else. We're saying if you want to win this World Cup, it's highly probable you're going to need to beat the Men in Black. So the thing about them is you give them if there are 4 occasions with 4 chances in the game, they're going to score tries with 3 of them, right? So you're looking at anywhere between 15 and 21 points that you're going to have to score, plus penalties. You need to be able to score.
Yep. So we're going to need to see more out of Wales. I mean, Wales could very easily make it Wales could make it as far as the final, but they should make it past the quarterfinals. If you're in a semi-final, who knows? But as you say, once they come up against New Zealand, haven't shown the firepower to do that.
Mm.
There's a lot of chat in there about how how good Italy have been looking, and could they cause an upset against South Africa this coming weekend? Look, Italy have played the 2 lowest ranked teams in the tournament so far. That's the facts of it. Canada and Namibia are the 2 lowest ranked teams. They're the 2 weakest teams here. So you cannot look at the Italian results and go and get anything from that. They've got their 2 wins. Congratulations, well done. But they're just going to get thumped in the next 2 games against South Africa.
Yeah, Italy have got a good pack, right? Not a great pack, but they've got a good pack. And when they come up against the lesser nations, again in the tight 5, they're going to cause all sorts of trouble. But when they come up against a great pack, then they're in for hiding, right? Especially with a bunch of athletes in the back line. Now, my hope is that South Africa will show some ambition in the back line and attack right from the back. It almost seems like something's not right with Willie Leroux. You've got 2 exciting wingers, whether they select Makazole Mapimpi, Spoo and Causey on the left wing, or they might shift Colby over and select Spoo and Causey on the right wing. But whatever of the 3 wings that they select, they've got such speed merchants. Unfortunately, the ball goes to Dalende at 12 to die. You almost, if the wing is going to see the ball, you also know that it's got to skip 12 and go to 13, 10 onwards. But I would hope to see the Springboks start to use the ball and use their athletes in some way, because certainly I believe if the Springboks are going to meet the All Blacks again and hope to beat them, they need to move the ball to whatever channel. Bless you. They need to move the ball to whatever channel Richie Mo'unga is defending in and attack him there. So that's the thing with Italy, is that they're coming up against, and I'm starting to suspect, possibly the best pack in the competition, which is that Springbok pack, right? That might just be both as the starting 8 and then the 4 or 5 coming off the bench as a whole package. That might be the gnarliest, most hairy pack in the competition. But I don't just mean facial hair. I just mean as in giving headaches, right?
Yeah.
They're a little bit down with the loss of Trevor Nyakane, who's had to go home. And I don't think that Vincent Koch or Thomas, the tank engine, du Toit, who's come out from South Africa, quite have an impact as he does around the field, Trevor Nyakane, and Nyakane's scrumming has been brutal in the last few months. But still, everybody's facing injuries. People are facing the loss of players everywhere. But as a pack, this is the problem Italy are facing.
Very true. Right, let's have a quick look at the pools. I mean, we've probably done most of this already, but I'll just bring up the pools on my screen. He says, even though that's not. There we go. That's good. So, Pool A, Japan currently top the pool with Ireland in second and Scotland in third. They've all played 2 games. Japan have got 9 points, Ireland 6, and Scotland 1. The big thing here that's been mentioned is bonus points. Ireland have got 2 bonus points, Japan and Scotland just the 1. So they're going to have to really go for it. Japan are against Samoa for that bonus point. Scotland have still got Russia to come, which should be a bonus point for them. But it's going to probably come down to that last game of the round between Japan and Scotland to decide who goes through along with Ireland, because you can't see Ireland losing to Samoa or Russia. Pool B, Italy sit top of the table with 10 points. But we've just discussed that their tournament's done now, basically, and that we'll probably see. I mean, New Zealand and South Africa will go top 2, but Italy will get themselves that 3rd place, which will get them into the next Rugby World Cup automatically. Pool C, England have had their 2 easiest games, sit top of the table with 10 points. Now come the hard games against Argentina and France. So far they've looked good, but we've got to wait until they see real opposition yet. France still have only played 1 game. And then Pool D, Wales top the group with Australia in second. Now that Georgia in third. Now we saw Georgia's. I guess this is the other place where we could have some interesting things. Could Georgia beat Australia, John?
Look, sporting history is littered with so-called pundits who've said they've got no chance, and then wound up with major egg on their face. Of course, they have a chance. Georgia have better chance. When is the match?
Georgia's match. So Georgia play Fiji next Thursday. Right. Australia play Uruguay on Saturday.
Right.
And then Australia-Georgia's following Friday. So Georgia will have about a week and a half. Australia will have about 6 days turnaround.
So I'll say to you that on that Friday, Georgia have a better chance of beating Australia than the All Blacks, because Georgia are playing Australia and the All Blacks aren't. So the fact that they're going to run on the field means that they have a chance, right? Always remember that. This is why sports is so terrific, is that you can support your team even though they may not be the best, and your team can cause an upset. If they do beat them, it will have to be a terrific beat up in the forwards, is the only way I see it taking place. They look tremendously fit, I must say. The Georgian players look tremendously fit. And even their big, burly front row look like they have very low body fat percentage. They would have to climb into the Australian forwards and just monster them. So they do have a chance, but it's very small, because I don't think that they have the ability to contain the Australian backline.
Yep. No, agreed. I can't. Alex makes a good point. I mean, Georgia have never beaten the Tier 1 team, so I mean, it would be a massive historical event if they did. But I just thought I'd throw it in there. It'd be a fun thing to talk about. Stephen Harris, there's more chance of me seeing Elvis than Georgia beating the Wallabies. Well, Stephen, if you get down to your local bar on a Saturday night, you never know who you might see singing away there. And Kai makes a point that he's praying Argentina beat England. Well, I'm not with you on that one, I'm afraid, but I'm English. Worried the cohesion the Jags have won't translate to the first team, like how we see the Sunwolves playing together has translated for Japan. Right, for Japan, What we've seen is all those players, very few of those players played much rugby for the Sunwolves at all this year because they've been in camp all year. And that's why you're seeing that cohesion for Japan.
Okay, so let's point this out because I was not aware of this. I don't know how I missed this fact, right? So maybe for the viewers of the channel, can you outline what it is that Jamie Joseph did and how many players were pulled out, how few were then drip-fed back in, and as a result, how many foreigners or non-Japanese players we saw playing in Super Rugby because the rest, the huge body of them were training for this World Cup. Can you just outline that whole picture for everybody so that we can get a better understanding?
Yeah, so Jamie George took the entire squad out for the first six rounds. Sorry? Jamie Joseph, not Jamie George. Jamie George is the England hooker. Jamie Joseph took the entire Japanese squad out of Super Rugby for the first 6 rounds. So Sunwolves only played with foreign players and Japanese players who weren't going to make the Rugby World Cup in that first 6 rounds. He then drip fed maybe a handful, maybe as many as 7 players back over the rest of the season, and he kept the majority of the squad in the Super Wolves development team, and they went around playing games against development and organised extra games when they went on tour with development teams in Australia, New Zealand, etc. So yeah, next to less than double figures actually played for the Sunwolves in Super Rugby.
And so out of a squad of 31, you're saying less than 10,
yes,
9 and under, were fed back into the Sunwolves team.
Yep.
And they were in camp for how long then? How long did he have them for? Like 6 months?
He'll have had them since December last year, so since pre-season.
So you're talking about kickoff in September. So he had them for 9 months. He had them training for this World Cup.
Pretty much.
Then I will say this, that teams better look out because that team will be far better prepared than anybody else.
Now I'm just trying to think when the top league happened this year. So maybe some of them played in top league, actually. But yeah, he's had them pretty much all year.
Yeah. So when those players come back into the Sunwolves for what is nominally meant to be the Sunwolves last season, we could see a dramatic change in the Sunwolves results.
We could, but the top league is happening at the same time as Super Rugby next year.
Right.
Now, do you go back to Sunwolves knowing you've got one season and upset your employer, or do you play for your employer in the top league, knowing that that's where your future is?
Well, I hope that Japan Rugby gets together with the companies that are the owners of these teams in the top league, or the sponsors. Is it owners or sponsors? Owners. And say to them, for the sake of the honor of Japan, I don't know, let us put the effort into the Sunwolves that we did into the Japanese team, and let's put some serious egg on the faces of Sanzar.
Unfortunately, half of the Japanese administration, Japanese union, don't want the Sunwolves to exist and think that top league is the way to prepare players for international rugby, which is rubbish. And they've already said that they won't stop players from playing for their top league team to play for the Sunwolves. So the Sunwolves are going to have a really poor season next season, I think. Unfortunately,
which will then give the false proof that the naysayers want. Anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, be that as it may, I think that's a terrific mistake. Remember, the Sunwolves, not this season, but the previous season, came here to Hamilton and beat the Chiefs in Hamilton.
Yep.
Now, you don't fluke that.
No, you don't.
You have to be a seriously good rugby team to beat the Chiefs in Hamilton.
Now, there is one more thing I'd like to point out before we move away from the pools and look forward to the upcoming games. Is if you look in Pool A, the top three are going to be Japan, Ireland, Scotland, which means Samoa will not qualify automatically for the Rugby World Cup next year. In 2023 in France.
Unless Samoa pull out some miraculous turnaround, right? But that's the way it's looking.
Yep. In Pool B, there are no Pacific Island teams. In Pool C, Tonga are not going to finish in the top three, having lost 2 games already. England, France, Argentina are most likely to finish there. So Tonga are not going to automatically qualify for 2023 in France. And Fiji, they've also had 2 losses. So at the moment, the chances of them finishing third in their pool is remote as well. So just like what we're seeing here is whilst the gap between some Tier 2 nations and Tier 1 nations, such as Georgia, Japan, the USA, is narrowing, the gap between the Pacific Island Tier 2 nations and the Tier 1 nations is growing because they used to qualify. One of them would used to qualify for the quarterfinals if we go back in time. 2011 didn't. I think one of them did. Tonga did in 2011, for example. Now we're seeing Tonga and Fiji at bottom of their pools.
Fiji did in 2007.
There we go.
And I think they did in 2015.
No, not 2015.
But I know they did in 2007.
Yep.
Samoa famously did in 91.
Yep.
And they did in 95 that I can remember.
But no, because in 2015 none of them automatically qualified for this tournament. They all finished outside the top 3. So that's just a point there that we're going to, again, none of the Pacific Islands are being competitive in this tournament, unfortunately. They're just not there, and so something needs to be done. Otherwise, we're just going to see the Pacific Islands basically fade away, put bluntly. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just pointing out that that's what's going to happen.
Well, maybe for the post-World Cup discussion, when we look at some of the things that could be done, this is one of the topics we can discuss, and we can take some suggestions. But one of the things I'd like to see, and I don't want to launch it to a long discussion because I know we've got games to talk about, but I would love to see something like a British and Irish Lions every 4 years. There's a Pacific Island team that goes on a tour, because I well remember the Pacific Island team almost beating New Zealand, and this is probably a good 10 years ago maybe, when they had this aborted one-season attempt at developing a Pacific Island team chosen from among the island nations, and they almost pulled off a win against the All Blacks, and I think that could be a terrific tour. But yeah, that's just an idea.
Yeah, we've seen them tour in November like that before, as a one-off. As you say, it didn't stick. Jordan in the chat says eligibility rules potentially should be changed to help them. Yes, there are a bunch of things like that we can look at and have a chat about post Rugby World Cup. But yeah, something needs to happen because at the moment they are starting to just fade away.
I think we must just be very careful talking about eligibility rules, simply because we need to. It's important for us to remember that we are also dealing with individuals' livelihoods. So if something is affecting the ability of someone to earn a livelihood and provide for their family, then it's all very well for us to talk about it who may not have the talent to be able to do that job. But if we were in their position and somebody is playing for a nation where administration is terrible and they earn a pittance, whereas they can go to France, earn a huge amount playing for a French team, and then qualify for France and earn even bigger money and have a higher profile and sell their image rights and maybe make a difference for their family right through to their grandchildren. You know, I think you've got to be a little bit careful about our arrogance in saying, well, for the sake of us and the ability to watch a great Fiji team, you know, you shouldn't be able to do that, and be a little careful around that.
Yep, agreed. Alex says they don't get enough games between World Cups. Yep, I do have some ideas as to how they can get extra test matches between World Cups as well. So we'll see how.
Cool.
But yeah, you're right. Eligibility. Yeah, a lot of people sort of talk about the that, but what we're going to need to remember that a lot of that the Pacific Islands now, particularly Samoa and Tonga, not so much Fiji, but particularly Samoa and Tonga, have more overseas-born players now than they do home-born players.
Yes.
Just because of the natural immigration of people from there.
Mm.
So, looking
just for the listeners to remember that there are more Pacific Island rooted players. So Pacific Island, not players. Let me say that again. Let me start again with my lips. There are more people of Pacific Island origin living in South Auckland, New Zealand, than there are in the entire Pacific.
Yep, Auckland is the biggest Pacific Islander city in the world. Yeah.
Yes.
So, looking forward then, just quickly at the games we have between now and next Tuesday on the next show. France versus USA and New Zealand versus Canada tomorrow night. Two not amazingly interesting games, to be blunt. Thursday, Georgia versus Fiji. That will be an important one. Can Fiji get themselves out of this malaise? They look like there's issues off the pitch to me, but hopefully they can pull things together for that game, because that could be a good game. Ireland versus Russia, which will be one-sided. Friday, Senegal versus Italy, which we've kind of already discussed. Saturday, Australia versus Uruguay. England versus Argentina. That is one of the marquee games.
Yeah.
So,
what price Argentina? Paul?
I've not looked at it, but yeah.
No, I mean, for you, what price do you give Argentina to win that game?
I'm not very good at odds, but I think I've gone England by 10 from memory. On my
This is not a case of your white underpants showing, is it?
No.
Okay.
This is England having a pack and Argentina not.
Yeah.
Then,
who plays the better style of rugby?
Yes.
Who plays the better style of rugby?
Argentina got the more offloading style of rugby, if that's what you mean. But England's style of rugby in that sense has improved a lot over the and I think people will be surprised by the back play that we're going to get from because England got electric outside backs, and I think they're going to want to get the ball there once they get front football. Japan versus Samoa also on Saturday. That's a must-watch game because, let's say Samoa could cause Japan issues, but we'll have to see. Sunday, New Zealand versus Namibia. One-sided. France versus Tonga. We've not seen anything yet from France and Tonga to suggest they'll trouble France. And then Monday, there's a rest day. There's no game on Monday next week. So there you go. So that's what you've got coming up, and the games that we think you need to you should watch. Any final thoughts, John?
Yeah, I think we've been thrilled so far with some of the results that we've seen, and with some of the rugby. Because let's be honest, the Ireland-Japan game, although not high scoring, was a terrific game to watch, right? And in Uruguay's victory over Fiji, we also saw something very exciting. So all told, we have a World Cup that really has opened up, and we haven't even spoken about how that win by Japan over Ireland has thrown into chaos all the projected semi-final slots and possibly pushed Ireland into the other half of the draw. So yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to be glad about, to be thankful for. This World Cup is shaping up to be something quite terrific. And hats off to the Japanese spectators who really have added something to this World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. The friends over at on the Blood and Mud Rugby Blood and Mud podcast, they have what they call a shit good rating at the or shit good section at the end of their show. And I tweeted them and say, shit is the amount of people moaning about referees on Twitter, but good is the Japanese crowds, which has been wonderful. So yes, that's absolutely. And we have deliberately, if anyone's wondering, deliberately avoided refereeing on this show. We've had enough of. I've had a stomach full of it recently. So yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
Mm.
So John, thank you. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I agree with you.
Yep. So thank you, John, for joining me. This one, I'll be back tomorrow night with the All Blacks edition, and we'll preview the Canada game and the squad that's been selected, as well as think about who might be in the squad for Namibia, because it's a quick turnaround for the Namibia game.
You got to feel for Namibia. I mean, they go from the Springboks to the All Blacks. I mean, this is what you want to play rugby for. If you're Namibian, you're like, we're going to get to play the Springboks and we're going to play the All Blacks. That's great, but still, that's a tough ask.
Absolutely. This one, their World Cup final is versus Canada at the end of the day.
Yes.
And they've got to save all their players because they play New Zealand on Sunday, and then Canada play on the Tuesday against South Africa.
Yes.
And they play each other on the following Sunday. So Namibia is in a nice place where they don't actually have to, where they have a nice 6-7 day turnaround between their last game and the Canada game. Canada go from Tuesday to Sunday, but yeah, they will be saving all their players for that game because that is their Rugby World Cup final, essentially.
Yes. Okay. One last thought before we go, just for the overseas or non-New Zealand followers of the channel. New Zealand are playing 3 brothers in their starting lineup. It's the second time ever that 3 brothers have started a World Cup game. The last time it happened, I believe, was in 99 or 95, possibly, when the Tuolangi brothers that play for England, when their father and 2 of their uncles played for Samoa.
Yeah, well, okay, they know the Tuolangis, all bar one,
Right.
play for Samoa. It's just one of the brothers that plays for England. All his brothers played for Samoa.
Okay. Well, I know there's. Maybe it's Vunipola. Maybe it's Vunipola.
I would be very surprised if it wasn't the Tuolangis, because the Tuolangis, there's I think there's 6 of them.
Who are the 2 brothers that are playing for England at the moment?
Vunipola.
Okay, my bad. Sorry, I got my Tuolangis and my Vunipolas messed up. My bad. So, the only other time 3 brothers started a World Cup game was the Vunipola's dad and their 2 uncles, right? So their father and their father's 2 brothers that started for Samoa. I think it's in 95. There were 3 brothers that played in 2015. That's the PC brothers that played for Fiji. Tonga.
Yep.
Right? But they didn't all start. There was 1 starting and 2 on the bench. So
Right.
It's quite an achievement to have 3 brothers starting for the All Blacks, starting a World Cup game. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to their family. And when you consider their eldest brother had to give up rugby, he was playing at provincial level, had to give up rugby because of concussion issues at the age of 28. And their youngest brother is still coming up through the ranks, and I'm told I've heard is tremendously talented and possibly also a future international. All you can say is there's something that their mother feeds them.
Oh dear. Something that we might cover another is there's been some interesting selections as to how teams have gone about choosing their first and second choice teams, and in order. I mean, England's one that's been I've found interesting and stuff. I think the All Blacks is going to be interesting to see how they juggle their side between the Canadian team, Canada, Namibia, and then into into Italy. So that's perhaps a topic we'll talk about next week. Is looking at how the different coaches have juggled their squads the playing squads to give their players rest, etc. I mean, you chose Georgia as a good example as to how they've targeted certain games and rested players to make sure that they are available for the right games in the right condition. And unless we add extra weeks or an extra week on to the Rugby World Cup, that's always going to happen, unfortunately. So, thank you, John.
Can I ask you one last question before we go?
Yep.
Has been, first of all, has there been a standout player for you so far? And second question, has there been, if it's not the same player, a standout player from among the smaller nations that maybe we weren't aware of that has raised his profile?
Ooh. No, I don't think I've seen a standout player yet, to be honest. No one has sort of stood out to me as head above everyone else. I mean, there's been good players in certain games. Trying to think about from the tier 2 nations as to who might have stood out. At the moment, I'll be honest, I'm watching far too much rugby.
They're all blurring together.
And they're all blurring together. I watched 7, or I caught up on 7 Mitre 10 Cup games over the weekend. I will be physically at watching 7 games this weekend, 4 Mitre 10 Cup, 3 Farah Palmer Cups. Trying to remember actual individual players is just beyond me at the moment. Be honest.
I'll leave it then. The one player that has, and remember this is one game only, right? So I'm not talking about players, but the one player that stood out to me so far as startling. When I say startling, I mean the wow factor about his play was Chitlin Colby against the All Blacks. Simply, we don't see. I can't remember when last I've seen a player make, I don't want to say a fool, but certainly leave All Black tacklers for dead multiple times in the same run. So he was startlingly impressive. And then among the tier 2 nations, the one that stood out for me, and again, this might be the recency bias, but what stood out for me was Gorgotsa, Giogoyagotsa, a young number 8 for Georgia. That's a youngster with tremendous promise, as well as their halfback. But really the one that impressed me most was their number 8. And it's going to be really interesting to see the impression he can make when Georgia plays some of the whole teams.
He wasn't startling, but he made a massive difference to a team. I mean, when Tamua came on for Australia, totally changed how he totally changed how they played. So he got
absolutely.
So he was not startling, but someone who made the whole team change. So that was so he's got a stout to a certain degree. Who looks dazzling by his absence? Sexton. Sexton looks fantastic by the hole he's left in Ireland, and because he's not played well this tournament yet, but the hole he left in Ireland for that. David Higgins says number 15 for Samoa yesterday. Beat a lot of defenders, looked dangerous. So that's Nanai Williams.
And I forgot one other, and that was Michael Leach.
Yep.
Leach for Japan, especially in that Ireland game, I thought he was magnificent.
And also, the Japanese hooker as well was superb.
Yes, he was superb, and he didn't deserve the man of the match, but there was something almost intangible about what Michael Leach brought when he came on that just seemed to lift the whole team.
Yep. The leadership piece of it, but that's very, very true. So those are the kind of performances more than players that have that I'm remembering so far from this tournament. But as I say, I'm too much rugby at the moment. I put a post out on LinkedIn as saying, how can I get 2 or 3 more people, 2 more versions of myself? Because at the moment there's just too much going on. And on that note, thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure, as always. Don't forget, everyone, I'll be back tomorrow night on the All Blacks edition, talking about All Blacks. We'll be back at 8 p.m. on Monday night with the Mitre 10 Cup show, and 8 p.m. on Tuesday night with the #Rugby chat next week. And I will probably put in some post-match reactions over during the week because, hey, I'm not doing enough as it is already. Become a supporter of Driving Maul. The link's down below in the notes. Patreon.com/Driving Maul. I forgot to do I didn't even do a sales pitch halfway through the show. Jeez. Amateur. Bloody amateur.